It was the last week of spring semester senior year. I just turned in my thesis. And in a cruel twist of fate, I had one more paper to write. But I had run out of juice. I can't do it, I thought. But what can I do, I wondered. It was an odd class. The professor was brilliant, with a sharp but cynical sense of humor, and he was actively alcoholic, sometimes drunk in class. And so it was a very uncomfortable class, and it was very sad. And by the end of the semester, even though I had spent all those months with this man, I felt like I didn't really know him at all. But I knew myself, and I knew that I could not write a paper on Andrew Marvell and the literature of revolution. I didn't even know what that meant. Instead, I sat at my typewriter with the glorious clicking sound, my gleeful soundtrack, and I wrote about the three pieces of literature that I was holding very close to my heart as I was on the cusp of my new adult life. And I loved writing that paper, even though, and knowing full well, that that paper could very well wreck a perfectly fine grade. I attached a note. No disrespect, I promised to read Andrew Marvell someday. I just couldn't write it, but this is the paper I could write. And then I put the paper underneath his door, slid it under with a whooshing sound, and I turned from that door and felt another one open. The last paper of my college career under the door, and my life as an adult was about to begin. That's kind of how I felt last Monday when I contemplated preaching the sermon that I said that I would today. There was just no juice. How can I do it? But what can I do? And the feeling was oddly familiar. And I remembered that paper. I remembered that paper about the Little Prince, Winnie the Pooh, although I don't remember what exactly, but it was some Winnie the Pooh something, and Robert Frost's Two Tramps in Mud Time. So here we are. My 22-year-old self deeply, dearly wanted so badly to unite my avocation with my vocation as my two eyes make one in sight. I wanted love and need to be one, for my work to feel like joy. And I wondered, do I have a right to even have such a dream? Because it was somewhat unheard of in my family of origin. First and foremost, you did what you needed to do to support yourself and to support your family. You strived to live with dignity. I remember hearing that. You must live with dignity. And if you were lucky, and love and need were one, then good for you. And actually, my mother and father, a medical technologist and an educator, respectively, were lucky, as they did, in fact, enjoy and they loved their work. But I seemed to be emerging as a horse of a slightly different color in my family. And I had the sense that in the horse race that is life, that to set out with a frosty dream was a little bit self-indulgent. So work is such a complicated topic, right? On any given Sunday, and I know this well, there are souls who are gainfully employed. There are souls who are unemployed, underemployed, or unemployable, all for a variety of reasons. There are those, especially in these turbulent times, who question the stability of their jobs, who feel vulnerable always, who mistrust their employers, who feel they cannot make a move, however, for fear of losing benefits or for fear that there is a lack of opportunity. And there are those fortunate ones who thank God or thank their lucky stars or thank their good fortune, those who have managed to pull off that elusive dream that Frost talks about, the one that blends, sees one in sight of avocation and vocation, love and need. And I am one of those fortunate ones. Sure, there were stretches of time in my life when I did what I needed to do in order to do what I loved to do. And that was fine. That was good for me. That's good for all of us, in fact. But I never lost hope. I never lost hope that someday I would be doing work that was for the future and for heaven's sake. I loved being a health educator and advocate. But when I knew I was done, I also knew that I needed to reckon with a long-felt sense of call to ministry. And you all know how that turned out. I get to be a minister. Every day, I am telling you the truth. I thank God, I thank my lucky stars, I thank my good fortune that I get to serve this beautiful, joyful, hilarious, righteous, compassionate congregation. So let's pause for a moment and think a little bit about compassion. That's what I thought I would be talking about today. Compassion as it relates to a quest for justice. And then I jumped ship. So Neil Overstrom sent me a few links that led to a couple of TED Talks. And those of you who may not be aware of TED Talks, they are these brief, 18 minutes at the most, little jewels of presentations given by smart and creative people to inspire others with their smarts and creativity. The TED Talk motto is ideas worth spreading. And so the links Neil sent to me were talks on compassion because he thought I would be preaching on compassion today. So there's just this little part that I will. Many of you listened to Krista Tippett's show On Being. It used to be called On Faith, and now it's called On Being. She's a journalist who has won many an award for her thoughtful conversations about what it means to be alive and human. I learned that she is the granddaughter of a Southern Baptist preacher. She has an interesting background. In her TED Talk about compassion, she described it as kind, curious, empathetic, forgiving, reconciling. She described being compassionate as simply showing up, being present. And she said that compassion is as simple as, of course there's nothing simple about this, but is as simple as listening closely to someone else, listening closely to someone else. That it's not about agreeing with the someone else. It's not even about liking that person necessarily. It's about merely acknowledging their humanity. Compassion is about listening to others merely to acknowledge their humanity. So I'm going to insert a plug for small group ministry here. Right here, in the middle of the sermon, because it's my last sermon for 4 months, and so I get to be a little messy today, I decided. So here's the plug. Do yourself a favor. Seriously. Get yourself to a small group. If you are young, if you are elderly, if you are a parent with young children or adolescents at home, really get yourself to a small group. If you are not female, if you are a young adult, small group ministry is a remarkable opportunity to practice your compassion. It's an opportunity to be present to your own humanity, to nourish a deeper compassion, to be the recipient of compassion. And it changes our culture and our life here at All Souls. The more people who do it, the more the culture here shifts. End of plug. Tippett says we should be teaching compassion much like we teach any other important topic, and I agree, and I nominate the 114th Congress of the United States as the first class to learn about compassion. But I also think that being part of a faith community, this faith community actually, we are learning a greater compassion. And that's why, in particular, and most of all, that my job now feels to me like both vocation and avocation. I get to witness both emerging and enduring compassion. I get to challenge myself to be the best that I can be just by witnessing the kind of compassionate person I see all of you striving to be. And there's more. I get to sing. I get to tell stories. I get to read and write and write and write and write and write. I get to cook. I get to be part of one of the very few bastions of community that is still truly multi-generational. It's the only reason, well, not the only reason, the big reason I went to church when I was a young adult. It's the only time I saw anybody who wasn't my age. I get to sit at the table and do the work of the congregation with people who care as deeply about congregational life as I do. I get to sit with you and hear amazing stories, jaw-dropping, surprising stories, full of love and sorrow. I get to pull up in the parking lot, thrilled with my new Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett recording. Thrilled that I cannot stop listening to. I am unable to get out of the car. Literally, I'm sitting in the car, you've all done it, in the parking lot, listening to Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett sing I Won't Dance. And there's Spencer Johnson coming out the front door. I get to call Spencer over and make him listen to I Won't Dance. And I tell him he best not turn up his nose at the thought of Lady Gaga, because he does at first. Because wait till you hear, I say to him. And then I watch as joy comes over his face. And as he does a little dance step right there in the parking lot. That is the joy of my vocation. That is the joy of my avocation. And I wanted to tell you about it before I leave for 4 months. Months during which I will miss all of you with an ache so deep. And alongside that ache, I will be so happy to be temporarily free of the blessed and holy pressures that is parish ministry. And now just a tiny word about sabbaticals. Eric is going to be saying a lot more about this next 2 weeks from now, but sabbaticals are kind of like powering down the photocopying machine. When it will not do what you need it to do any longer, you click it off completely, hoping that when you click it back on, it will magically snap back into shape and it will do what you need it to do, right? The powering off and then the powering on seems to mysteriously realign all the technology planets, right? There's nothing particularly mysterious or magical about a sabbatical, but it does allow the spirit to ramp down. Take stock. Imagine a new way. So I will be taking stock of my ministry to you. What's bringing me joy? What's working well? And conversely, what's not working so well? What do I need to do differently? And sometimes those answers can only come in the quiet. When we are ramped down, when the power is finally off, seems to come more powerful insight when there's more time to dream, as we learned with Leo's experience. So now I am on the cusp of another chapter for who knows what sabbatical will bring. Where are we going? The ring doves coo. We do have beautiful things to do. I do. I do, and you do. You do. And so this is a sermon that answers a paper written 33 years ago. had a brilliant but broken professor, somehow saw reason to grant an exhausted but hopeful student an A+ in the class with honors. For me, it was his greatest teaching. My blessings to you as we each of us strike out in the 4 months until spring comes again. May it be for you a time of great promise and joy. Amen.